Welcome to Strategic Growth Council, a podcast about strategic growth and mergers and acquisitions for the middle market. I'm Kit Lyle, your host, and if you're interested in learning more about organic growth, growth by acquisition, or the sale of your company, this show will be interesting or useful for you. And if the guests today do a good job, it might be equal parts interesting and useful. I'm kidding. Thanks to our sponsors, Acclaro Growth Partners, a strategy consulting firm serving middle market M&A. Visit acclaropartners.com. And our second sponsor, of course, is Strategic Growth Council, the peer advisory council / virtual roundtable / mastermind group for senior executives and business owners contemplating acquisition, sale, or strategic growth. Strategic Growth Council collaborates with participants in the M&A ecosystem, such as private equity groups, lenders, iBanks, and service providers making M&A happen. Visit strategicgrowthcouncil.com to learn more. All right. That was a long intro. Every episode, I interview an expert or a handful of experts or a participant in the world of strategy, growth, or M&A. And today, I am joined by none other than our sponsors at Acclaro Growth Partners, or three of them anyway, Josh Present, Beth Hattel, and Chris Longiaru. Welcome.
Thanks for having us, Kit.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I know you just had a engaging meeting, and you're just coming from one meeting to the next. Sometimes it's hard to to splice things up a bit, but I'm glad you're here. Glad you made it just in the nick of time. Let's have a minute's background on each of you, and we'll start with Chris Longiaru.
So for those of you that have seen this before, you don't want to hear about me twice, but I basically ran the path of almost everybody that you've seen in M&A, from investment banking on to private equity, and now I'm the COO here at Acclaro. So I'll do something a little more personal, which is when I'm not sitting at my desk, which is almost always, I am glued to the TV watching the New York Rangers, and so I hope there's a lot of Ranger fans watching this.
They're not. No, I'm just kidding.
There should
Thanks,
be.
Chris. Thanks for joining. Chris mentioned, for those of you who have seen him before or heard him before, he was on a previous podcast in which we talked about, what was it, sell side? Or was it buy
Yeah,
side?
sell side and buy side.
Okay. And Josh Present, welcome. Thanks for joining.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a relative newbie to Acclaro. I came here because I was very interested in working with a smaller group of partners and ultimately helping to build out the risk practice. My background is primarily in corporate investigative due diligence. I've worked closely with private equity firms, hedge funds, IB investment banks, and outside counsel over the years in the deal space across the spectrum, both on buy side and sell side and integration. So I am looking forward to talking to everybody today.
All right. Thank you, Josh. And Beth, whose last name I've been told rhymes with battle. Beth Hattel, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. My name is Beth Hattel. I am a partner also at Acclaro. My background's in market strategy, distributed systems primarily, navigating channels or routes to market. Because there's channels pretty much everywhere, I've worked as a consultant and in industry with companies of all sizes, various sectors. I know a lot of seemingly random things about industries that most people don't get much thought to. I believe, as my colleagues have heard me say, that the answer's in the market, and often business success is predicated more on what you do in the market than your service or your product or your market condition.
All right. Well, as Chris mentioned a moment ago, he's been on the show before talking about the buy side and the sell side, and today we're going to be talking about something different. We're going to be talking about kind of that vast middle ground of a hold period of a private equity group that we refer to as value creation. But first, and Chris, I'll turn to you. Where does value creation fit into the grand scheme of services that Acclaro offers? Did I describe it well? It's sort of bookended and it's stuck in the middle.
Yeah, so it is a significant portion of our business, but one of the smaller. So, Kit mentioned, we talked about sell side when you're selling a business and buy side when you're buying a business and the diligence associated with that. For us, that's a majority of what we do, but for a business owner, the most of the time is actually spent owning it, right? And when you're owning it, what you're trying to do is you're trying to grow it. And there's a lot of different questions and studies and things to work on that are associated with that. So that portion of our business is probably about 20 to 25%.
Okay. And the other two service areas are market or commercial due diligence and sell side market studies. Yep. Okay. All right. So, what does value creation mean? And I've been trying to think of a context for this myself, because when you're trying to increase the valuation of a portfolio company, there's a lot going on, right? There's equal parts art and science. And I guess, as I boil it down to the lowest common, simplest level for me to wrap my head around, I think of Harold and Kumar or Cheech and Chong, right? So what if their task is to grow a little pot seedling, a little cannabis? They've got a private equity fund called Harold and Kumar Capital, and they're growing weed in some grow room, and they've got a grow light and they've got like a drip of irrigation, and they figured out the right concoction of potassium and nitrogen and fertilizer and dirt and so forth. That's just plain science, right? It's real easy because all you have to do is get the proportions right. But if you turn that into a true business and you're needing to grow that business, there's a lot of other stuff going on, right? So maybe my analogy was not so good, but my point is there's a lot of complexity. So what is value creation?
Well, I think Beth is probably going to have the best answer to this. So I'll say something not as eloquently, and then I'll ask Beth to fix what I said. But so Kit, in your example, you're talking about the creation of a product, but there's always a more efficient way to either create the product, distribute the product, market the product. There's going to be hurdles to overcome. There's going to be other competitors doing things, in that market with the same product, right? There's going to be bigger entities and smaller entities competing in different ways in different regions. So understanding those and navigating those as best as possible, right, within a market is value creation. And Beth, Josh, I don't know what I left out, but I'm sure that you do.
Yeah, well, I guess I would say a couple things. One is you talk about growth, which is always the goal, right? But I think sometimes you have to really think about what makes profitable growth. And profitable growth, and I started to say this at the beginning, is sort of about what you do in the market, and understanding and navigating what those things are is really critical for value creation, because you can sell a lot of something and not necessarily have profitable growth. And I think the key to making those plans and understanding, and there's strategy and there's tactics, and the harmony of those two things really are what goes on in the market, what's going on in the competitive space, what's going on internally that allows you to respond and understand the requirements out there and how things are changing. I mean, it's really where we add value is when people are out there. Our clients are busy running the business, and so they don't always have time to figure out what's going on in the market and then how to therefore use their strengths the best way, right? Because the right strategy for one entity is not necessarily the right strategy for another. And our ability to kind of pull those things together and make a plan that works best for them is really, I guess, the long and short answer of value creation, or where it adds value to what you're describing for a portfolio company.
Yeah, so let's sort of summarize briefly, and then maybe Josh has something to add. This is is science, but it's also art. In other words, there's a lot of nuance and prioritization and sort of where do we focus to it. And then in addition to that, there's internal versus external. And my understanding is that you all would focus more, less on, human capital or the manufacturing value strategies or operational issues or IT issues, and look more at the external. Chris, you talked about brand and competition, and there's channels, et cetera, et cetera. So, anything to add to what I just said, Josh, or would you disagree with anything I just said?
No, I think they both got it spot on, but coming from different perspectives. I mean, if you had asked me also, I probably have a completely I wouldn't say different perspective, but maybe a different view on even more how to create value. And I think for me, just kind of coming from my experience, I tend to view more looking at the inward as ultimately affecting the outward and around how people build trust, and to think of some of the organizations that we've worked with recently. They're very much not probably as focused inward as I would like to see when it comes to building trust, and that which I think ultimately helps them build their value creation, build their multiple, and ultimately have a positive effect on how people outwardly look at them.
Very interesting. Very good. So what causes a client, you mentioned a client, what causes a client to come to you specifically for help? And I guess that's a two-part question. One is, what are the drivers of them thinking, hey, we need help here? And then secondly, how do you help? How do you differentiate?
You want me to take that one?
Sure, Beth.
Clients, they typically reach out for a couple really basic reasons, actually. Bringing a new product or service to market, entering a new market with a current product, right? I've got this product and I don't know how it plays in this particular space. Sometimes they're struggling to achieve unexpected growth, especially portfolio companies in the PE world. For example, it seems like the market's growing faster than I am. What's going on? Sometimes we need to just help our clients understand, where they fit and where they're best suited to win. And that's where I was talking a little bit about profitable growth. The other piece of that, and you've got the three of us on, and we're kind of a good mix, because for Chris, the answer, I say the answer's in the market. I know the numbers don't lie. Chris goes to the numbers, right? So we've got this combination, I guess, of the inward and outward, as Josh was pointing out. But the numbers don't lie. And I'm like, right, but there's more to the story than the numbers. And I think that's really how we're best suited to help, as we're looking at all of those things and trying to have it all come together and make, a meaningful story for our client to react.
Yeah. What would I'm just putting myself in the mind of a listener that might say, okay, I hear you, but I got that covered, right? I can do that myself. Why might they outsource this role to you?
Well, what you probably know is that running a business is not only a full-time job, it's two full-time jobs, right? So, could they do this? Yeah, they could if they don't care to see anybody ever and sleep, right? I mean, it's basically, if you really want to take the time to do this right, you're going to look at the perspectives of a lot of different people. You're going to look at numbers from a lot of different angles, right? So you're going to look at what customers think and what they value, right? How they perceive you. Do you need to change that perception or not? How competitors perceive you and what competitors are going to be focused on. And then you have to decide what portion of that could you even address? And then the cost of addressing that and the likelihood of success in addressing that. And all those things take a tremendous amount of time and focus. And if you are running a company, your focus is going to be the company, right? It's not going to be, you're not going to have enough time, focus, or the process that we developed and we use all the time, right? It's just not going to be something that's efficient for you to do.
And I think I'll add one other thing to that. I think I've spent a lot of time working with people who are already in trouble and are responding to events. And I think where we come in these days is a lot of good businesses as they're trying to grow. And I think the ones that have been most successful, in my opinion, they understand that they have blind spots and that they need an independent view as to where those are, and to echo Beth, where they have other opportunities for growth, not just their blind spots. I think that those are the ones that people, regardless of what they may view that they have covered, to echo what Chris is saying, the ones who I think have been most successful also are ones who are cognizant that they can't cover everything, and they come to us for helping them understand where they have other opportunities and where they're not doing as well.
Josh, you said when you think of these examples, maybe there's an example you can think of in which you really had an impact, and there was a surprise, or things went in a direction maybe the client didn't expect, or you had a real impact. Well, and I turned to you, Josh, only because you had talked about sort of examples or experiences.
Yeah,
but,
I can think I have one
Beth
that actually is relatively recent, and I think this also speaks to, and Beth, that you'll recognize this just because it's something we were working on recently. But I think we recently just looked at an organization that was consumer products driven, but was very much split between selling to individuals and entities that really need to buy something to keep operating, and for like access for medical reasons. But then on the flip side, they also are selling to multiple types of individuals and commercial who are spending money discretionary wise, and they don't really need the product, but want to do it because it kind of fits their lifestyle. And what we realized is that we had felt, as we had looked into this, and again, this speaks to expectations and to coming up with an independent view, we had felt when we looked at opportunities that their opportunities were very much driven mostly by what else there was that people needed specific to what they were looking for. And I don't mean our product, our initial focus, the initial impact that we looked at was focusing on an enthusiast product, when in many ways we saw growth coming from the non-discretionary side and the people that needed it more when it comes to that. And I think that we also felt that where the client was focusing maybe was not going to meet their end goal growth expectations, and again, value creation compared to what their initial thoughts were. And I think I wouldn't say that they were surprised, but I think it spoke to, they had seen some risks based on their initial viewpoint. And I think we helped them think through whether there were actual risks in that process. That's what I could at least think of individually when it comes to recent impacts of looking something based on your expectations versus what you find when talking to the market.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, often the perception is probably skewed. For instance, from this angle, I might look tall, but it's not the case. And so the idea is that when you're in it,
Chris is 5'1" for those. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm a tall guy. So when you're in an industry, right, and you're looking out, you probably can't see what the customer perception is of you. You certainly aren't going to hear what your competitor's perception of you is. And even if you were able to ask them, they probably wouldn't tell you the truth. And so, that information is important, and it's important to hear it from an independent third party who takes it from who it's coming from and gives you the unadulterated truth so that you can react to it and benefit from it.
And how long does your process typically last? Is there a typical?
Nothing's typical. I'd say we've done stuff in as quickly as 3 weeks, and we've done stuff that's lasted a few months.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's a good range. Yeah. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I want to go ahead to any lessons learned that we haven't shared already, or words of wisdom for our listeners in terms of growers or acquirers, those that are being more intentional and disciplined about strategic growth. Words of wisdom or suggestions that you might have for them?
Well, that's got to be Josh or Beth. I don't have a lot of words of wisdom, so.
Well, I think, we just talked a little bit about seeing things differently and how we add value. And I think there's a couple ways to look at that. I think it's always great when we can develop an understanding of the value chain that gives our client a unique way of looking at that's just not typical. I think in terms of really what's the best way to work with us, we've had some examples recently on an engagement where, if an engagement doesn't reach its full potential, a lot of times it's a communication breakdown or a lack of experience using consultants. We're here to make you look good. There's no need to keep information from us. That's not really the kind of work we do. It's actually, we do very supportive work. And we want our clients to tell us what they know and let us build on it. Our most successful engagements are when they know how to use their consulting team. I think long-term success is embracing an iterative approach to strategy, kind of, using us all the time, I suppose, staying on top of market forces, being aware of the evolution and revolution in your industry. I mean, it's kind of a puzzle in motion, and that's the fun part. And if we're thinking about it all the time while somebody's running their business, I mean, that's really where we add the most value.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that sort of helps me in summarizing. And then I'd love to ask anyone who could elaborate on that concept of continuous evolution or iteration. But, when we think about this, the reasons that clients reach out to you are for a new perspective, a different view, a fresh set of eyes, more clarity. They've got a business to run, they're focused, they've got multiple jobs to do, as Chris said. And you have access to data that they do not have, as you guys have talked about. So when you talk about iterating, or Beth, I can't remember the word you used, but more of an ongoing dialogue, relationship, ongoing insights, strategy as a living, breathing, ongoing process as opposed to a static event. Anything you guys could add to that? Or did I capture what your intent was?
I think the only thing I would say is we have the benefit of being an outsider, but at the same time, like when our clients recognize the value we bring is our collective experience, but also because of what we do, we're in and out of all different industries all the time. And I think that allows us to bring a whole set of perspectives. It makes us a better partner. Internally
Absolutely.
And externally, quite honestly. We all have a good mix and our clients in their industry, but we can pull from other industries. And I think that's a value.
Makes sense. So I'm going to just ask more broadly, how should clients reach out to you? The website is acclaropartners.com. Would you like to share an email, or what's the best way for them to take advantage of your services?
Yeah, you can email any one of us. With any questions, anytime. We get a lot of phone calls. So really, whatever's most convenient for you in order to get in touch with one of us is exactly what you should do. The main number is 703-860-3355. So you can try that as well.
All right, great. Chris Longiaru, thank you. Josh Present, Beth Hattel, thank you for your time and your insights on value creation. Remember, visit Acclaro Growth Partners or acclaropartners.com for help with growth strategy, specifically value creation, but they also offer market diligence, commercial due diligence, and sell-side market studies. And by all means, visit strategicgrowthcouncil.com for all of our episodes and show notes. Follow us to see the latest episodes and make sure that we're in your listening queue, and give us a thumbs up or a good rating. And we appreciate your listening. Thanks very much.
This podcast was produced by Heartcast Media.